Welcome to the speed ramping tutorial. I'm done. So I was probably like 12 or 13 when I first learned what speed ramping was. And it was an escape video because I noticed this incredible sound that took place when the slow motion hit. And I was trying my best to figure out how to make it myself. But now it can just be so hard to learn something when you don't know what it's called or even what's happening. So let's break that down. So to put it simply, speed ramping is just the process of changing the speed in a clip and having it smoothly transition from regular speed to slow motion, or from slow motion to fast motion, and any combination therein. But what the heck? Now, why would you even want to speed ramp? Why don't you just choose your slow motion to be slow motion and make your fast motion to be fast motion? Well, there's a couple of reasons. For me, the main reason I like to speed ramp is that it allows me to be more, I'll say, creative in post. It means I can take a single clip like this and I can do all sorts of things with it. I can let it be a time lapse or a speaking clip. I can show you a goofy thing that happened in the middle. Whoa. Historically speaking, speed ramping has been used in all sorts of other ways. Use cases are everywhere and kind of nowhere. More recently on YouTube, you'll see these like cinematic travel films. And the main reason people are using speed ramping there, it's just eye candy. It's basically just to make things look and feel cooler in some sort of way. It doesn't really help tell any sort of story, but it can help keep an audience engaged in whatever story you're trying to tell. For skate videos, however, speed ramping has been used to slow a trick down so the mind can actually understand the absolute insanity of what is going on in a trick. As a note, all the skate clips at the beginning of this, none of it warranted slow motion, but I just, whatever, I'm 30. I'm trying to figure it out again, okay? Leave me alone. All right, let's go see Frozen. Now in movies, like proper feature films, Hollywood, go to the theater, movies, it's a different story.
Daddy!
Hey, I'm gonna see Frozen 2 with you now.
You surprised me. Look how many video games.
Now the weirdest thing happened. There was no speed ramping in Frozen 2 at all. In cinemas, in the films, you don't really see very much speed ramping at all because most of the time it doesn't serve to enhance the story. Like imagine if the Frozen 2 trailer was just like a YouTube travel edit. It'd be worse. It would just be worse. However, I like speed ramping. I have a lot of fun with it. I use it quite a lot in my edits, and I think I've used it in good ways, and I've definitely used it in bad ways, and I'd love to teach you all of those things that I've learned along the way. Sidebar, this is not as impressive as it looks. Like, it's awful. Okay, let's jump into the edit now. So while I am a Final Cut Pro 10 editor, a very proud one, I love it a lot. While the workflow may change if you're in different software, what I want you to remember is that what's important here is not the workflow, even though I think it's rather good and efficient. What's important is all the other stuff around it. It's like what speeds to use, what not to do. All the stuff we're about to dive into, it applies regardless of your software. The how to do it might change, but the what and the why, that's what's important here. What you can do in Final Cut is click the clip, hit Command R, and that's gonna show you your speed. It's gonna show you the little retime editor, let's say. And there's a few ways you can deal with this. You can simply click this little arrow, choose a slow, choose a fast, or hit custom and you can type it in yourself. But what I like to do is a bit different. I typically find myself using the range tool. So I'll find a moment here, hit R, and I'll select just where I want the speed adjustment to happen. And I like to hit Shift N, which I've set as a new speed section. You'll see we've got these things here. So now what I can do is I can choose to speed up a section, and this is what we'd get. Looks terrible. Or we can slow it down because I shot this at 60 frames a second. That works reasonably well. Another hotkey that I've set up is Command P, which is automatic speed. Basically what that means is 60 frames a second footage will slow down to the most it can be slowed down without getting all choppy or needing to interpolate frames. One thing fun you can do is check this setting here, and it's called Preserve Pitch. If you turn that off, now what's gonna happen is rather than trying to make my ah sound like the normal ah, it's actually gonna slow down the audio pitch as well. So we're gonna get a, and then you get that, which sometimes is funny, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. What's really beautiful about Final Cut editing is these handles here. If I double click it, I can edit the source frame. And now what that means is I'm actually gonna be able to roll where the beginning and ends of that slow motion take place. Maybe I want this to last a little longer. And then by adjusting these handles, you're adjusting how long it takes to transition. That is the foundation of speed ramping in Final Cut Pro 10. It's really simple, it's really easy. You can also speed it up. So maybe on the end you want this little bit of where the camera follows me turning right. Maybe you want to turn that into like a whip right transition. So you could take the end of this and you could hit Shift N and you could speed that up. So you make a, kind of looks like the camera's doing a whip right. If you haven't seen my transitions masterclass, I do a lot of this. I talk about how to do it. It's got 1 million views. But another thing that I've set up that I actually learned from someone in the comments in that video is that you can set up hotkeys, which I've done. So now my Shift 2, Shift 4, Shift 8, once I've selected this area, are gonna be 2 times speed, 4 times speed, or 8 times speed. And I'm not necessarily going to use that as the speed, but it can just get me there quickly, somewhere fast. This is not a video about transitions, but if you were to find another video that had a similar sort of pan right movement, we can take this section where it has gone fast, Shift 8, speed that up, remove some of these frames where it's not panning. It works okay. You can kind of fake a transition with some music, with some sound. You're gonna have a little, a functional whip transition from a clip that you never even planned to be a transition. You can use speed ramping to help sell that effect. One of the things I love most about speed ramping is that I can make the edit more musical. I can time things out so that taking off of tricks and landing tricks is boom, ba, boom to the beat. So if you rewatch that intro section, even that like, you'll notice I have 4 different speeds on this clip, 100, 80, 40, and 100, just to make takeoff, land on the grind, and land on the ground all set to the beat. This is a preference thing. I just think it's fun. It can make the edit just feel satisfying. It makes the music kind of married to the visuals. It's not gonna work for every shot, but when you can make it work, it's cool. This is a point that I really can't stress enough. There is not a right speed and a wrong speed. There's no hotkey that you can press that's always gonna make your speed ramps feel just right. You have to experiment, and you're gonna need to experiment with not just the speed, but also exactly the moment that that speed takes place. And to do that, I've teamed up with a sponsor. Today's sponsor, which you hear me talk about all the time because they are a fantastic sponsor and it works really well for these segments. Storyblocks, which is a stock footage website, but it's so much more than that. It is a subscription-based platform where you can get fantastic, high quality, and unlimited downloads of awesome stock footage, but you can also get things like sound effects and After Effects templates. You can get textures and just all sorts of these elements that are gonna help your production along. I've pulled up Storyblocks' website here, downloaded a bunch of clips, and I want to use those clips to show you some really common mistakes people make when speed ramping and some really easy ways to fix those mistakes. So I've said this a few times, I think, depending on how I edited the video, But there is no right and wrong speed that works for every clip. There are just speeds that work better for certain things and speeds that work worse for certain things. For example, I think people walking sped up at the wrong speeds looks really, really bad, and I see it a lot. People walking at 2 times is just like, ba, 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 ba. I feel like it works if you have comedy music. But when you're trying to make something cool and visually pleasing, it's just really not great. Really watch for the movements, specifically for the movements when you're moving from regular or fast to that slow motion. I like to plan it out so that it switches right as one of the legs is swinging forward. So it's like, woo, and then you can see and feel that ramp. Another common mistake people make is to just have the speed ramp take place at the wrong time. Sometimes you might be using speed ramping to just speed up a pan in a shot because maybe you want to see something here, then you want to see something here, but the in-between just takes too long to get there. But if you speed it up at the wrong time, it's not gonna look like the pan is just faster, it's gonna look like things get fast and then it whips and then things get fast. And it's just not gonna look very good. You're gonna wanna roll the beginning and ends of that speed ramp in order to find the exact best in and out points. And finally, something you're gonna wanna pay attention to is when you are doing a bit of speeding up, let's say at the ends and beginnings of clips, it's going to accentuate any camera movement there was, which can actually look really bad. Because in the same way that slow motion makes things feel less shaky, fast motion will make it feel more shaky. Just stabilize that clip, and that's going to look a lot better. If you're interested in seeing more, there's a link in the description. You can go to Storyblocks' website, browse through their footage. They've got lots of cool stuff, and I think you'd be surprised at just how helpful they can be when you're trying to tell a story, build an edit, all that fun stuff. Storyblocks, thanks for sponsoring. Audience, click the link, check it out. That was, I probably clipped the audio. The main takeaway here is just like, you gotta practice, 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 practice. And just like going out there shooting something, then diving into your editing software and just experimenting, seeing what you like, what works, what doesn't work. And then you can take some of those things you learned and apply them into your next project, your next video. And probably you're gonna make mistakes and you're gonna learn a little bit more and you're gonna take that information, you're gonna take it to the next project and so on and so forth, and then you die. That's just life. I hope that watching this video was maybe that first step or 5th step or 69th. But I hope it was a step along the way of you getting more comfortable with speed ramps and finding out when you should use them and when you should most definitely not use them. So if you've enjoyed this video, I would appreciate so much you liking the video. If you want to see more just like this, subscribe. I've made some of them, and I plan on making several more. Leave a comment down below. I'm sure a lot of you have really cool workflows that even I haven't seen. If you're a Premiere editor, leave some comments. Tell other Premiere editors ways that you can do this. If you're using apps like LumaFusion or Adobe Rush or Windows Movie Maker, do people use that? Sony Vegas. If you're an editor that's not a Final Cut editor, please leave some comments below. I think you could really help out other people. Thank you so much for watching. I love you. I like you. You're great. I will always think about you.
My butt cheeks spread open there. Ow. I didn't like that.
I think you did it.
Yeah.